Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, both classic and new comics we want to read, and everything else in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Planes, Trains, and Comic Books. Today, we are finishing our little, what would this be called?
The Ultimates look back, I guess.
Yeah, the Ultimates look back. We're finishing our Ultimates look back with the Ultimate Fantastic Four books. Now, previously...
Marvel's First Family.
Marvel's First Family.
Marvel's First Family.
Yes. And previously, we've gone through Ultimate Spider-Man, the Ultimates, and Ultimate X-Men. So those were like the four, including these are like the four titles that they launched with. I think there was like a couple like side ones that happened. I remember one called like Ultimate Extinction, and there's like some other ones, but those aren't really like remembered. So I don't know if they were successful or not, but either way, like these ones are considered like a really good jumping on point where you kind of get like, we'll say all the good stuff out of the old runs, like the 60s stuff, really quickly and with a little bit cleaner explanation of what's going on in this ultimate line. So, and that continues with the Ultimate Fantastic Four, which is by co-writers Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Millar. Now, I don't know if you read too many comics in the 2000s, John, but these two writers were probably the two biggest writers of the 2000s as far as comics are concerned. So that's pretty awesome. And also like Bendis could be pretty wordy in his comics. I feel like that wasn't so bad in this. There were some panels where I'm like, this must have been a Bendis page or something, but for the most part, I felt like it just had kind of snappy Mark Millar dialogue. So, and then the pencils were by Adam Kubert, who I can't remember. I always get the Kubert brothers mixed up. There's the one that does like all pencil work that's colored, and that's like the Wolverine origin one. I think that's Andy. And then so I think Adam is considered like the better artist out of the two, or at least he's more liked generally, I think, or his style is.
I really enjoyed the art in this, so I would definitely love to compare them.
Yeah, well, this is the one this one is the one that's
okay.
The one people prefer. I don't know if it's someone said like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not an artist, but I've just heard other artists say, oh, Adam is better than Andy as far as like figure work or something. I don't know. But I guess to me, I'm like, it looks good. I don't give a shit. So I thought the Wolverine Origins book, the art is one of the selling points to me. So I don't mind. And he also did 1602, I believe, as well. So like, I liked the artwork in both of those. So, but this his brother did this one, Adam. I think I've read less of his comics. He doesn't do as much. So I think I haven't read as many of his, but yeah. So Ultimate Fantastic Four. I mean, if you know the Fantastic Four, this is basically the origin story of them told again, but like we said, kind of speeding up certain events to come sooner, giving a slightly different reason why they get their powers and stuff. But also, one thing I like about the Ultimates line is they're going into some of the backstories of the characters early on. So right away, we get like the birth of Reed Richards, who is Mr. Fantastic. I think I've already said this before, but there's a fantastic Norm Macdonald joke that I just remembered because I said that. So go look up the Norm Macdonald Mr. Fantastic joke on YouTube. It's fucking hilarious. So
I think I recall it.
Yeah, I know. I think the last Fantastic Four book was right after he passed, and I had just seen that, and so. But anyway, go look that up if you want some good humor. It's like how they got their names and whatnot. But anyway, Reed Richards is born, and he's got normal parents and shit, except as he grows up, like right away as a baby, he like looks at his mom's hair, like right after birth, pretty much, and he's like analyzing it, and they're like, "What's the baby doing? Like, what's going on? Like, our baby's weird. Like, normally babies will just like play with stuff or whatever, but they're not gonna like scientifically examine your hair." So they're establishing early on that Reed Richards is a genius. That he's got super intellect. Then we jump to like 11 years after that, and or I guess it's 10 years after that, and we see Reed Richards in high school. He's getting picked on by the bullies. I thought the teenagers were written better in this book as compared to Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men.
Yeah, I feel like everybody was pretty. Even the side characters were pretty fleshed out enough and like felt real.
Right, but like the slang they were saying didn't completely date them. You know what I mean? Like there was no like way, so way. Like there wasn't like like so fetch or whatever the fuck you would say from the 2000s. I felt like this one had a little bit more like generic teenager stuff, but like it still felt new and hip, but not dating it quite as bad as the other ones were. Because there was some language, I think it was in X-Men, possibly, where it was like, oh yeah, that's some slang from the 2000s. But yeah, we get the first introduction of Ben Grimm, who is Reed Richards' best pal ever. And he's like a football jock who helps Reed get away from those bullies as they're giving Reed a swirly. And so, we establish their friendship, which is, it's like kind of like the only time they ever talk until later in like, I don't know, 4 issues later when everything goes wrong. So like, this is the only time we see him. So it's kind of good they threw him in here. Cause I was like, oh yeah, that was Ben, wasn't it?
Yeah. And they kind of, I do like that they show like, it helps with the Reed's, like, I guess, like always wanting to like impress too, because his dad doesn't think any of the things that he's doing as far as like, being scientific and being intellectual or cool. He's like, we should be play football and be cool. And so like when Ben comes over, he's like, hey, Ben Grimm, the Grim Reaper, get it? Cause you're the best, whatever. Like,
cause you murder people on the field.
Yeah. So I thought it was fun. Like a little extra, like, oh man, I can't even impress my dad. Like,
yeah,
he just likes the meatheads.
Also, it kind of sets up. I don't remember if they go into this later on, but like, so if Ben is like a super popular jock kid in high school and probably college, then when he transforms into the Thing, that's either that's going to hit him harder because now he's like a freak and he's never been an outcast. So that's probably going to be that's probably why he freaks out so bad, like,
yeah,
or one of the reasons why. They don't say that explicitly, but you can kind of read that into it a bit. But yeah, like you said, Reed Richards' dad is all about Ben, but not about Reed because he's an egghead. He doesn't understand his kid, but his mom does encourage him, to do his stuff. So we see that in like his family life. Ben is also like, he doesn't understand what the experiments are, but he's also like, I'll help you out if you need something. I don't know what you're doing, but if you need me to like hold something or help you in some way, I could do that. So Ben's at least a good friend in that way. And we see as, high school goes on, Reed Richards is doing experiments, building machines. He's talking about like he thinks he's figured out how to get to another dimension, or open a gateway to another dimension, and he's figured out how to like send objects into that dimension, but he doesn't know where they're going. He's just like, oh yeah, I'm like doing it. I'm like turning the machine on with like an apple in there or whatever, and then, or I can't remember what he's sending. Is it like race cars or something, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, like little model like cars and planes.
Yeah. So he's like sending these little models into somewhere. He doesn't know where exactly, but he knows it's another dimension. And of course, the first time he does it, it like, explodes and like knocks all the power out in the neighborhood and everything. The dad's super pissed. But then 6 months later, there's a science fair, and he turns it on. He's got it perfected a little bit more. It's not going to knock out the power grid this time, and he teleports into another dimension in front of the judges, and all of them are like, "Huh, all right." Like, it didn't seem like they were very like crazy. You know, they weren't like, "Oh my god, that's amazing." They were just kind of like, "What did we watch?" You know, like they're because it's a high school science fair, so you're expecting volcanoes pretty much, and you got extra dimensional travel or whatever, or interdimensional travel.
Whatever this kid is talking about, this overachiever.
Yeah. But he did pique the notice of the government who heard about this. I don't know if a teacher told them or something, reported them. But the government comes a calling saying, hey, we want to give you like a free ride scholarship to work with us and at the Baxter Building. And, you know, you'll be able to do your experiments there. And so it turns out that they've actually been working on the same thing, just on a larger scale, like same kind of machine. It needs to go into, or it's opening a doorway into this dimension. They call it the end zone, so they give it the name. But they're like, we open this doorway, and they have like a mirror like into it, so they, or a window, I should say, so they can like see into it. And all these cars keep fucking popping up, like these models. And so they're like, who is this kid? So they find him through that. Through a science fair, and so they're like, oh, you know, you've gotten farther than us, and you're just doing it in your house, so like, why don't you work for us? That would be great. So he does, and so he gets a job with them. Then we move to 5 years later from that. So if it was 10 years, so 15 years, so this is 4 years before, or 5 years before the events of when they, you know, get their powers and shit. Yeah. So this is just like him working at the Baxter Building. We see there's like, they call him a professor, like he was a teacher, but like if Reed is just working there, I don't see how it's a teacher, but maybe because they were still in high school or something. I don't know. But there's this guy named, what's his name? Molkin?
Dr. Yeah, Molevic.
There you go. So if you don't know, in the 60s run of the Fantastic Four, the first issue, they fight a bad guy called Mole Man. So if you know that at all, immediately you're like, oh, this is the Mole Man. But he's at this time, he's just a scientist, and they make sure he looks super gross. He's got like boils and shit on his face, and he like smells, and people don't like him. And then we also get introduced to Victor Von Doom, because they're not just recruiting Reed Richards for this government project. They're recruiting anybody smart. So actually, his name's Victor Van Dam as a child. Then as he gets older and becomes a bad guy, he becomes Von Doom. So, but we get introduced to Victor Van Dam as a kid, and he's unlikable. We'll say he doesn't like people.
Yeah,
people kind of think he thinks he's better than them, but I think he just thinks they're all annoying. So, and he's on another level with smarts, because he even corrects Reed Richards later on, like calculations, and is like, you're doing it wrong, and he's right. So he's not wrong necessarily to think he's better than everybody as far as smarts goes. So yeah, they're just working on all this stuff. We get introduced to Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, who are the kids of the head scientist. I don't remember what his name is, but we'll call him Mr. Richard.
Dr. Storm.
Or Dr. Storm, yeah, sorry, Dr. Storm.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Storm is in charge of this experiment, like as like the figurehead, but I guess he's got all these genius kids working on the project with him. So, and Sue, I don't know if Sue's a genius in this, but she is, going to school here, it seems. And
are you saying that she is the daughter of the head scientist, so she just kind of gets to be there? Wait a minute.
Well, Johnny does.
I know. Yeah, I was like, Sue obviously is smart because she understands.
I'm not saying she's not smart. I'm saying she's not Reed Richards / Victor Van Dam smart, meaning she's not there to actually come up with fucking theoretical physics for this project. She's there to, I mean, she can
Yeah,
still
but
help out and
she,
stuff.
yeah, and she understands some of it, but yeah, Johnny obviously doesn't. I don't know why Johnny's there other
Yeah.
than
I think it's
his
just,
death.
it's always bring your kids to work day at his place. So, they just go to school here, I think is what it is. And I think that makes sense. Like all the scientists should bring their kids there, and then it like helps these, genius kids feel like they're going to high school, because how else are you going to get kids to go to high school? You can't just open a high school, right? So you have to like, basically we're doing homeschooling or like a private school inside the Baxter building with all the, I would think these are all the kids from the scientists, because there's a bunch of kids that aren't just recruited for this project. But
Yeah, no, it's probably like what we just watched for Oppenheimer, like a Los Alamos.
right, exactly. That's exactly the Baxter building is Los Alamos. So
Yeah.
And so we see as they're working, Reed Richards is stumped on a thing, and this is where I was talking about where Victor Van Dam, says, "Hey, you've got it all wrong. Like here," and he just rushes into Reed's room, and he's like, "This is it," and he like takes his notes. He basically erases his whiteboard as in some little words or whatever, and like starts writing his own equations, and then Reed gets all pissed off, but then when he looks at the equations after Van Dam leaves, he's like, "Oh, you're right," but also like you fucking suck at talking to people. So
Yeah, you can't just like come in and like mess with my shit.
yeah, so he makes a plea to Victor, or he makes an offer to Victor to say like, "Hey, why don't we work together? Why don't you help me with my stuff, and I'll help you with your stuff?" And so, because they're working on more than just the interdimensional project, there's of course the government, so they have their fingers in lots of pies, and so Victor's working on something for them and that, and so Reed's going to help him out. At the same time, in the background, we see Molkin. Professor Molkin is or has been doing immoral experiments. So apparently, he came up with like a way to make. I don't know what they'd be called, John. I mean, they're called mole people in the comic, but like in the original comic, but like
Yeah, I guess it would just be like
homunculi. Like they're just like he's making.
They're amorphous people, like blobs of people. Like
Yeah, but they don't have brains humans. And stuff.
Yeah, they're not human, and they're not. Yeah, they're just not human. They're like weird creatures.
He's basically making minions.
Yes, exactly. He's making minions. Yes, but they're not yellow.
Yeah, they're not yellow. They're shit brown. So, yeah, he's been making these minions, and it was like a project he was trying to get the government to finance and support, but they had said no previously because it's immoral to like basically you're making slaves, and so they shut it down. They thought, but apparently Molkin's been working in the background, and he has been doing it behind their back. So they kick him out, and he very dramatically points at Dr. Storm and says, or he just points at him, but he means I'm gonna fucking get you, Storm. So if it's the last thing I do. So then we cut to 5 years later. So finally we're present day now. We're in the Nevada desert, and it seems like the government has got their Stargate set up. That's basically what they're doing. They're making a Stargate. So
it's a Stargate.
yeah. And so they have it's kind of cool. It's like a big platform with stairs going up it, and then like what looks like it kind of looks like there's going to be a Stargate in the middle of, but there's two triangular pieces meeting that above it that kind of are going to focus the energy or something. It is very Stargate. I'll say that, like as far as what the tech looks like. And so they're getting prepared to I guess fully test it, where they're going to try to, they figured out how to actually send stuff through that dimension and anywhere, and then out of that dimension anywhere on Earth. So the theory is they're going to test an apple. They're going to send it into that end dimension, the end zone, and then it's going to come back out wherever they want on Earth. So they're going to land it in Guantanamo Bay, they say. So that's like how they'll know if it's successful. We also see Reed and Johnny Storm and Sue Storm all have a fairly good relationship. Johnny even says like, you should ask my sister out, like trying to hook him up. So Reed's very
Yeah.
okay, cool. I'm sure nothing. Well, you know what? I'll ask her out after this experiment goes great. How about that? So, basically that's what's about to happen. And then I wasn't sure why or how, but somehow Ben Grimm is allowed on this ultra, high security government program test site. So Ben Grimm shows up. I don't know if he's supposed to be in the military and that's why they let him, or if he's just Reed was able to get him on there. Did you pick anything up from this, like how he was able to?
No, I was trying to look back at that, and like it just seems like he's like, oh great, you made it. I invited this guy, and we gave him clearance, and he's my best pal, and
Yeah,
he's a musclehead, even though like they're not technically going yet, they're just sending things through it, and like like you said, like transporting to specific places. So I don't know.
yeah, and this is like the first real test of it. So I guess he's just there to be like, that's what we were building in your garage 10 years ago. So congratulations, buddy. But so they get the machine ready. Everybody's standing. I didn't know why they did this. I mean, they definitely shouldn't have stood on the stairs that are like going to the platform, because, if you're doing a scientific experiment with dimensional portals and shit, I would just stand as far back as possible. But they don't. They're standing and looking right at it as they try to send an apple to Guantanamo Bay. And the second the machine turns on, the apple doesn't disappear, but the 4 kids, I guess it's 5 kids, disappear, because we also have Victor who's there as well.
Yeah.
I say kids, but they're probably in their like early 20s now, because it's 19 years. And I guess, no, it's 21 years. It started 21 years ago. So we start the next issue with Reed Richards waking up in the middle of the night in the middle of the desert, and he's like, what the hell happened? And we can kind of tell by the art that he is already all stretchy. So if you didn't know, Mr. Fantastic's power is that he can stretch his body to any length, it seems, fairly.
Yeah, but I don't think I've ever seen like a limit that they physically put on.
I have. I believe there's been a storyline or two where like someone tries to like stretch him beyond his limits. I can't remember what happens, but that's definitely something I remember, like a bad guy trying. But
that makes sense. That's not one I've ever like. Yeah, I guess I've come across or picked on. So
yeah,
in general, it's like, yeah, he can stretch to pretty much almost anything.
it's gonna be like Stretch Armstrong when you stretch him too far and the goo just comes out. His skin rips and goo just comes out.
Yeah, just
but anyway, he like starts calling for help. He doesn't realize his body's all weird looking, and the government, they're still at the test site. So this is like, I guess, seconds after it went off. Reed appeared, right behind where this was. So he wakes up and everybody's like, "Where are the kids? What happened?" And of course, Dr. Storm is like, "Oh my God, my children!" And like he already lost his wife earlier, they said. So like it's just him and his kids, and he's like, "Oh my God, if anything happened to them, I would die or whatever." And then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my God, what's that thing over there?" And they immediately open fire on Reed Richards as he tries to stand up, but he's all like loose, we'll say, where his arms have like unintentionally gotten long. And keep in mind, this is the first time he's ever used powers, but he's doing it on accident, so he doesn't know how to control them or anything. Yeah. So they shoot at him, and as the bullets hit him, they bounce back at the people that fired on him. So it looks like they're trying to, or it looks like, he's firing back at them, but he's not. And then they realize as they get closer to him that, wait, that's Reed. Oh my God, what the fuck happened to Reed? So, and then the machine also explodes as well. So like, right as they realize that, the machine explodes, and it's like, okay, well then even more fucked up stuff happens. Like they can't, they'll have to restart all their work on this project. So they find Reed, then like somewhere in Mexico, kind of similar to Reed, a big rock man wakes up, and we see that's Ben Grimm. He has been turned into the Thing, which is, if you didn't know, a big orange rock man. That's kind of what he looks like. But he doesn't know what he looks like, and there's just like kids that find him, and they're like, "Oh my god!" And then he kind of like gets up and starts running after them. And as he's running, we see. I like this addition to him, like his power set. It's an accidental power, we'll say, where he is so heavy that as he walks, like basically he causes earthquakes or like mini earthquakes. So like as he walks, there's like animals in the street, and they like boom, and like they fall off their feet. And he tries to run after the kids, and then he ends up running into the street and like gets hit by a truck, and he makes the truck flip over him because that's how big he is, or like how invulnerable he is. So, but he didn't know what he looked like. He doesn't understand like why
are all these people running away from him?
Yeah.
Right? What's going on with the silly kids, and like what is wrong with the earth? What's going on?
Yeah. So, so basically the government's like, okay, we figured it out, kind of what's going on. It seems that all 5 of the kids have been sent somewhere. We don't know where. At least Reed had been, and they also heard word of the rock monster Ben. They're like, okay, Ben is in Mexico apparently, but we haven't found Johnny, and we haven't found Sue, and we haven't found Victor. And so also Reed is all pissed off because he's now working with them again because they realize it's Reed. And he's like, something's wrong. Like, these aren't my calculations. He's looking at the papers that I guess were put into the computer or something, like, and he's
looking at the coordinates.
Yeah, he's looking at the coordinates. He's like, this is not what I put in my, when I did the work on the computer, someone has changed it. And it turns out he comes to the conclusion that Victor was the one who changed it because they had an argument before this started. And then Victor was like, fine, we'll use your coordinates. But apparently he went back in, or at least that's what it seems like. He went back in and tried to, and changed them. And that's possibly what caused this mess. So, and it seems like Dr. Storm, he's freaking out because, his kids are still missing. So he's like, oh, fuck, I got to find my kids. Where the hell are my kids? And we see Johnny Storm. He wakes up in a hospital bed. So not in the desert. That's nice. In France. And he wakes up to a nurse speaking French to him. And he's like, what the hell's going on? And immediately as he sits up, he's like, wait, like, I got to get out of here. Does someone speak English? Come on, please, someone. And as he's like kind of freaking out, all of a sudden he spontaneously combusts because he is the Human Torch, which means he turns into fire, basically, like his body.
His whole entire body.
Yeah, he still holds like some kind of a human shape, but everything bursts into flames. I will say it seems like, when he flames on, like his clothes don't burn off. So like, I don't know why necessarily that is, but I guess it's just because they can't show a wiener in Marvel Comics.
Maybe those are because those are the clothes he was in initially.
Maybe, but Ben, with Ben, they use shadows to strategically cover his groin area because no one wants to see his rock dick. So
his man, that's an interesting. It's all craggly.
Yes, that's gonna hurt. All right, get the KY. Yeah, I'll also say as he lights on fire, the sprinkler system comes on, and it is not gross black water, which is what comes out of those sprinkler lines. So
what are you talking about? It's always crystal clear. Perfect,
yes.
Perfect water. It's it's fresh.
Oh, it smells so bad. Anyway, I've never heard like someone who was actually in a fire or like in in something where the sprinklers went off. But I would like to hear what a normal person thinks when they realize, what's this black, gross water raining down on me? It's like in the movies, it's always clean. But anyway, so so Johnny Storm has been found, and he gets reported to everybody. So they're aware of him at least now. And then we find Sue. They still can't find Sue, but we find Sue because we show that she is underground. She has been... I don't know where she was originally teleported, but
she's quote unquote rescued.
Yeah, she was rescued by Dr. Molkin. It turns out that after 5 years ago, when he got kicked out, he decided to go live underground and what was it like? Find all these lost civilizations like
Atlantis, yeah. Basically, he just wanted to collect all of the knowledge of ancient lost societies.
Yes, so he somehow found out where those were all hidden, I guess, in the earth. But at the same time, he's creating his mud people, I guess we'll call them, that are like, his minions. And so, and let's just say, if he looks bad before, he looks a lot worse after living underground for 5 years. Say that.
He kind of looks like a cross between the clown from Spawn.
Oh yes, yep, he does.
And then like one of the what are they called, the nihilists from from Big Lebowski.
We are nihilists
because
we don't believe in anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good description of him.
Yeah, and it's a fun update. It's still like a classic. Like, if you're familiar with the character, it's a big blobbish, creepy looking dude. Yeah. And he just
a toad of a man. A toad
of a man. Perfect.
Yeah. So he has found Sue, and I guess he's in love with her, right? Because he's saying like, I'm gonna breed with you, basically. Like, I have to do some tests, but I think you're the perfect person. You were always so nice to me at school. And that's creepy because he was her teacher. So she's, of course, like just freaked out and kind of going with it because she doesn't know what's going on. Also, when she wakes up, we see her powers kind of are there. Like, she is, if you didn't know, she's the invisible woman. So she can kind of turn invisible. And she's doing it unconsciously in this moment, so she doesn't even notice that she's doing it, because as she sits up, she becomes whole again. So it's kind of like her introduction to what her powers are, for us at least. Then as we start the next issue, we see Johnny Storm. He's been brought back to the government facilities, and they're just trying to figure out, how the hell does this combustion thing work for you? And they're like, there's got to be a trigger of some kind. So he's like, what am I just going to think, like, flame on? And then as he says that, it comes on. He's like, oh, shit. And he's like, flame off. And it goes away. So he's like, sweet. Flame on, flame off. That's easy enough. And I got to say, that's a pretty easy way for that to happen. But I guess the suit they give him, because they give everybody like these new blue suits. I guess, so Ben Grimm ain't walking around naked, and Johnny doesn't burn all his clothes off every time. So he's got a nice fireproof suit. We also see Ben, he's here now, and he's talking to Reed, and he's like, what the hell happened, man? And Reed's like, I guess it's my fault. And also he's like, oh, Ben, like, the suit you're wearing isn't just to cover your rocky bits. It's actually dissipates your weight, I guess, or your like mass. So when you step, you're not creating earthquakes everywhere and like ruining buildings and shit. So somehow I imagine it's kind of like, I was going to say Pink Panther, but Black Panther's suit in the movies, where like, he gets hit and it like stores that energy, and then he can use it at some time. But this is just kind of like the same idea, but like inward. So the suit takes the energy from the wearer so that it doesn't cause harm to the surroundings around him. So, yeah. But Ben, like I said before, he's not used to being a monster. He's used to being the popular kid. And when Reed says, like, I don't know what happened, it was an accident. And when Ben asks, well, was it your fault? And Reed says, yes. Ben lashes out at him and tries to grab him. And then Ben didn't realize that Reed had powers. So as Ben punches or tries to punch Reed, Reed wraps around him with his stretchy body. And he's like, what the fuck happened to you? So I don't know. If I was Ben, I'd be like, well, I'm not the only one who got fucked, I guess,
Yeah, it does. I will say that, like, I know Ben he always turns into the rock monster, right? And I get that is, a complete, he can't, and I get it, he can't, in most iterations, he can't just go back to being normal Ben Grimm. Like, he's always the Rock. And so or always the Thing. And so I get that's why he's like, most upset and whatnot. But it does seem like I don't know. It always seems like he's, I don't know. He definitely he's the complains the most. I feel bad because I know
I
it's
would.
like,
I mean, I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know what he goes through. Like, does he eat now? I mean, I've seen him eat in comics, so I assume he does. How's he go to? How's he sit on a toilet, John? These are
That's true.
things.
Has used the
His
restroom. I don't
life
think
is extremely hard now, and
that's true. I'm not thinking about that. I feel
yeah,
bad now.
you're not thinking about all the stuff he goes through, John. You ableist son of a bitch. So, yeah. So Ben's mad, but he kind of calms down when he realizes that Reed is also affected, and it wasn't just him. Then we cut back to Mole Man and Sue Storm, and this is where he starts talking about how he's going to make her like basically his queen, and they're going to breed, and he's going to test her. And then we also see like as he's talking, she goes through her like invisibility. But unlike in the 60s comics, we get a really cool scene where we see her like nervous system, like her body goes invisible except her nervous system, then her skeletal system, then her musculature and stuff, then her. And so he's like, hey, like that's a cool little trick you did. That must have happened because of whatever they did to you in that experiment. So I guess that's one of the reasons why he's like, oh, like you'll be a perfect queen. We'll have crazy looking babies. Invisible toads, that's what we'll have. He takes her to like this big computer thing that I guess is the ruins of Atlantis. This was the only part I was kind of like, I don't understand what I'm looking at here.
I feel like that's pieces of things he's built there because he said it's. We find out it's directly below one or however many
the Baxter Building, right? Yeah,
yeah, it's however many meters below the Baxter Building. So I assumed it's just pieces of technology that he's collected and or built, so he could keep an eye on them and also like learn everything he's trying to learn and stuff.
Yeah, but they made it seem like this isn't just like circuitry and stuff or like computers and shit. It made it sound like it was like he had found Atlantis and plugged it in like pieces of rock or whatever the fuck, plugged that technology into this computer tower that he's built. And when I say tower, it looks like, a bunch of circuits and, cables and shit that are kind of bound together in a tower. And around it are a bunch of TV screens as you do. It kind of looks like a generic, like, cyber thing, like
yeah, it makes me think of like Wall Street, like the big thing in the
like back in the day.
Yeah, like the big thing in the middle where it's like, okay, watch the screens.
Yeah. It's basically that. It looks like something that belongs to the Matrix or something. But so she's dealing with him, and he's saying, you're gonna be my wife and all that shit, and she's getting pretty freaked out, as you would imagine. So we get back to the Baxter Building, and we see Johnny is introduced to the other two. So they're like, "Oh my god, you can light shit on fire!" But the mole man, or what's his name, Dr. Molkin, he was like, "Now is the time. I will send this monster that I have made from the like readings of the Atlantis ruins that I had." So it's like, I don't know if it's supposed to be like a Titan or something, like from Hercules or some shit. But he basically like cloned some kind of ancient monster and sent that up to in front of the Baxter Building in New York. And it starts attacking people just as those three, Reed, Ben, and Johnny, get together. Now they're still looking for Sue. They don't know where she is. So they're like, oh shit, what's happening? They look out the window and they see this giant monster. And Johnny's like, I'm looking out the window, and I guess because he's so hot, or he's getting hot, the glass melts. He's like pushing his face into the window. And so he falls out, and as he's falling, he's like, oh my God, and he yells flame on, and luckily the flames mean that he can fly. So he learned he's got a new power. He can fly.
Yeah, I like that. Like, because I was wondering, I was like, oh, how are they explaining? And then Reed's is like, oh, I guess because, yeah, like he combusts and it's like lighter than air, so he's able to like use it to fly. I was like, oh, okay, that works.
Sure. I mean, you basically have a jetpack on your feet, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense either way, but it's comics. So Ben sees that and he's like, oh, I'm going to try too. So like he jumps out and he just fucking like lands as hard as possible. And he's like, that was probably a bad idea. Like, he's like, that could have, I should have thought about that a little bit more. And then he gets immediately picked up by the big monster, and it tries to eat him, but Ben is able to like stand in his mouth and just hold it open. So he's, we're kind of finding out, oh, he's not just a big rock, he's also super strong. And then Reed is like, well, shit, I'll jump out too, because he can like make himself into a bouncy ball, basically. So he does that, and then he goes to help Ben, and he actually gets Ben out of the mouth, and then like wraps the monster's mouth up with his own body, like a rubber band. And yeah, basically, it's them fighting this monster. Eventually, they kind of win. It's clobbering time. Actually, I like the part where Ben's like, it's time to do something. I got to work on this saying or whatever, because his saying is it's clobbering time. So he didn't say it this first time, obviously, because it's too new of a
yes, but he knocks the crap out of that beast. Like, looks like one really good punch, basically.
Yeah, and then the monster falls back into the hole that it came from, and so they follow it down, and that's where they run into Sue and the mole men. Well, at first they run into the mole men, like the minions, and they're like, what the hell are all these things? And then they are confronted by Mole Man himself, Dr. Molkin, and then he's like, Sue is here, she's fine. We're going to like, I have her hostage now, because she basically rejected him and told him like she's not going to marry him. And he's like, fine, I'll just murder you. So like he just kind of has her there, and they find her, and we find out like, or they start fighting basically. So once they find out, oh, he was going to like kill her, and now he's trying to try to kill all of us, and also like take down the Baxter building and the government. Basically, they find out he's got a big chip on his shoulder with, against the government and Dr. Storm, because he was fired. And so he's like, enough of this, everybody attack. And so a big fight ensues with all these hundreds of thousands of mud mole people that he built, and the Fantastic Four. And basically, they just kick ass. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't seem like they're having too hard. I mean, they're outnumbered for sure, but we don't know.
But I guess because we don't really know like how powerful the mole people are either.
I'm gonna say they're not that powerful.
Must not be. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's like they're pawns, right? So like you can throw. That's what you hope you win in numbers, not in necessarily strength.
I will say, as they're fighting, Reed happens to notice one of the screens has Victor Van Dam on it. I don't know where or what. They kind of don't really mention him, but he's still missing, as you probably noticed. He was not found yet. No,
but we do know that Victor and Molkin were the only two that people that I get. He's the only other person that he really like talked to and got along with was Molkin. So.
Yeah. So. The roof begins to collapse as they've defeated all the mole men, but like I guess in that process they have the tunnel has begun to collapse around them, or I guess it's not a tunnel, but it's like a cavern, probably from the Thing, jumping around, and Johnny Storm is lighting shit on fire and stuff. So as it caves in, all of a sudden all the Fantastic Four are like next to each other, and it collapses, and somehow they're safe. And it turns out that Sue has a secondary power, kind of like all of them. Like we said, Ben's got super strength. I don't know about Reed, but Johnny, he can fly because he has the flames, right? So we have Sue has a force field. So that is something that I don't remember when that came in the regular series, but that's something that happened way later from what I remember.
I don't think she was able to like. Yeah, I don't
just remember. Go invisible. It was only invisible for a long time.
Okay.
But now it is established that it's, she also has force fields. So that must have been something.
Force fields.
Exactly. So that must have been something like 80s or 90s, maybe. I don't know. So maybe 70s. Who knows? Because in the 70s, they're trying to give like women characters more than just like, oh, she cooks us dinner while we go on our missions or whatever. So. That seems like when they might have done that.
Well, I know they changed a lot of the. I mean, like, because of the time frames, like, Reed was like 20 years older, I think, than Sue initially in the original run. Because like he and Ben were in like World War II. But, that's like, I know exactly. So it's like the really old. And then what else? I'm trying to remember. I mean, there was like celestial stuff at one point. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a whole thing. But either way, now they're all the same age, in this ultimate line,
everyth's okay.
and she has the powers that she has way earlier, just like a lot of the storylines here are happening earlier, like Doom being initially in this. He's not in this comic because they haven't found Victor yet. So I mean, I'm assuming he's coming in the second volume, because the next one's called Doom. So, but yeah, like basically they get out. They're like, hey, we got powers now. Reed says, I'm gonna try to figure out how to like at least cure Ben, if not all of us, and that's kind of where they leave it. They're like, we have to find Victor now, and that's it. So, and then they've officially rebuilt the machine at the end of this, and they have figured out, okay, we're calling this the end zone. It is Sector 7H, and they're gonna keep experimenting. So that is how this one ends, just kind of on a cliffhanger of we got to find Victor. But at least they defeated the first villain, and also I should say Reed and Sue get together as like officially. They're an item. So, but yeah, that's the main takeaway from this one. So, John, what did you think, and what would you give it?
Oh, it's a great introduction, and it's a great like you said, concise, like throw everything together. You get all the highlights of like if you have an idea or kind of know the Fantastic Four, it hits those notes. You get a little bit of I guess that little bit of extra as far as like just kind of making everything flow real well together. It's probably of all the Fantastics that we read, this and Spider-Man were definitely, I think, my two favorites.
Yeah, which is surprising because I remember loving the Ultimates, and Ultimate X-Men was always my least favorite. Just it never really clicked with me. But
yeah,
I felt like this one and Spider-Man, surprisingly, were the two best ones out of the four. So.
Agreed. Yeah, because I had only read Ultimates like altogether, and then this line, and going through and getting those, like, I actually really enjoyed Spider-Man way more than I thought I would. Even though the Green Goblin was a little, it threw me at first.
Hey, you know what? I rewatched Spider-Verse a couple days ago, and he looks the same as he does in that. So,
true.
You're wrong, John. Basically.
I just love that classic glider from the 80s and 90s. Man.
Sure. Well, maybe he gets that later.
Boy, it has to be a really big glider.
Sure. Why not?
You're right. But yeah, so overall, I'm a fan of Fantastic Four, man. I have been. I really enjoyed. Like I said, I think it got me right back in it. I definitely want to read more.
Yeah, I was like, I immediately want to read the next one.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we said before, like this is one that I did collect, and I had most, if not all, of this entire run of trades. So
trades. I was like, some of those issues are worth money.
Oh yeah, no, I wish in the issues, but definitely all the traits. So yeah, I guess I should give it a number. That's kind of the point. I liked it a lot, and it's a good introduction, and it's not long and drawn out, and it's the art is great. We didn't really mention too much, but
yeah, it's just good. Like the solid. I didn't have any complaints. There was like one or two pages where I was like, this must have been a fill-in artist or like a really rush page or something, But like,
no, I didn't get that at all.
There was one that I saw that I was like, I don't know about this one, but all the out of 120 pages, that's fine.
Yeah, so I enjoyed it a lot. I'm going to give it an 8. It was good, good story, good art, good run, and I'm ready to. Like I said, I will probably jump back in this.
Yeah, I'm looking at this like I'm a pretty big Fantastic Four fan. Like that was one of my favorite teen books. When I was reading comics a lot, like back in the 2000s, and Ultimate Line I always thought that and Ultimates were the best when I was reading them, because Ultimate Spider-Man was already at like issue 80 or some shit when I got into it. So Ultimate Fantastic Four was the last one to come out, so it came out a little bit later. So it was only at issue like 20 or 20 or 25 when I started reading it, which it just, and I was picking up an issue form. and I was loving it because it led right into that Marvel Zombies run and stuff too. I was like, this is so fucking cool. So like, I was a big fan of this run as it was coming out. So I might be a little biased, I'll say, because like I said, I mean, if you don't care about the Fantastic Four, maybe it's not your thing. But I think the storytelling is pretty solid in this story arc. Like it definitely takes the best stuff from like the first 60 issues of we'll say the best stuff from the first 35 issues of Fantastic Four, the 60 series, and kind of puts it into one thing so that you don't have to like, it doesn't drag it all out too long and whatnot. So, but if you wanted to get into the Fantastic Four, this is pretty much like a really easy way to get into it. It tells you basically the same story as the old one, a little bit different. Like I think I said in the original one, they get their powers by going into space and they get blasted with cosmic rays. But as in this, it's from the end zone. So, but it makes sense that they would make it the end zone because later on they go into the end zone. Like when basically that's where with Fantastic Four Full Circle, that's what that's where they went. So, that's like based on that. I can't remember what issue that was from. That this monster. I can't remember. I think it's issue 36 or something like that. That's when they go there for the first time. And so I think they just kind of were like, well, we'll just put that at the beginning and give that as the reason why they got their bodies changed. So, and I don't think we said it, or I didn't say it, but if you didn't understand what happened with the machine, they got sucked in instead of that apple. So the apple stayed on the platform and somehow the gateway opened up right in front of them and they got sucked into the end zone and were there for however long because time and space is all weird. And then they got spit back out. So the reason why they got powers is because they were bombarded with whatever is going on in the end zone, which we don't know yet because I believe the Trade 3 is called the end zone. So I figure that's when they'll figure that shit out. But yeah, so I'm going to give this one biased. Remember, I'm a little bit biased. I'm going to give this one a 9. I think it was super solid. I had a fun time reading it. It didn't like I said, I think this is my favorite out of all 4 of them.
Yeah.
But I am biased because I liked it before. So, but yeah, so you give it an 8. I give it a 9. It's a pretty solid book. Definitely check it out if you have any interest in the Fantastic Four, but don't know where to start. And I mentioned Fantastic Four Full Circle, but that is actually on our Patreon feed. So if you want to listen to that and have access to that exclusive episode, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word. And speaking of patrons, we would like to thank our patrons, Hoku, Otaku, Mike, Christian, Matthew, Kyla, and Joseph. You guys are awesome. And we really appreciate your support and help, and we hope you guys are liking the exclusive episodes. We have a bunch of them up, so if you want to listen to that Fantastic Four one, and then all the other ones we have Watchmen, we have...
we did a huge breakdown on Watchmen, actually. That was
3 episodes long.
It's a fun, like a real deep dive into it, because a lot of times we kind of, we're giving you the gloss over, like wanting you to go back and read. But since Watchmen has just such a rich history to it, it was one that we really wanted to dive into. Yeah. So, I still don't think, we do it as best as we can for our channel, but I still, we probably don't give it the justice that it deserves. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the justice it deserves is you sitting down for 6 hours and reading that fucking thing. All right. So.
Yeah. Like I finally did. That's one thing too.
John.
But yeah, so we appreciate you guys. And so if you want to sign up, patreon.com /planes, trains, and comic books, all one word. We are also on all our social media, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube with exclusives. If you haven't signed up for Patreon yet, but you want some more Fantastic Four, we do have Fantastic Four 1, 2, 3, 4 on there, which is a really fun story, and it's got Namor in it. If you're a fan of Namor.
Wow, and, are you really calling him Namor?
Namor, pardon me.
John, that is how they say it from the movie.
Yes, and that's what it is now.
No, it's not.
Because I agree with that.
It has always been Namor, all right? Namor is what his name has been for fucking 40 plus years, and now this movie comes out, and you're going to tell me that that's changed because some movie came out. No, That's not
Yes,
what it
because
is.
it's
And then you
Namor,
even
and
you
I
even
like
changed it to Namor, which is
I
the
did say
dumbest
Namor.
fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. So
How dare you?
Anyway, yeah, that one has Namor. So definitely check out Fantastic Four 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a really early episode, so we probably sound bad in it or whatever, but
We may not sound as polished, but
Yeah.
it's good because that story actually is really fun. Anytime he is involved with Sue or the Fantastic Four, he's always chasing after Sue as well.
he's always trying to bang Sue and seduce
So-
her, and she's always kind of receptive, which they never really. I'm waiting for that one storyline where they like. Turns out that
She leads him.
that Franklin Richards should be Namor Jr. or something. You know?
What? Oh, that would be crazy.
He's born with little wing feet.
So you always have to wear these shoes around your dad. You understand?
Yeah.
You
Why
always
the
wear the shoes.
Why the fuck does he have pointy ears, Sue? Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Why is he always in a green Speedo? That's what I want to know. Yeah, I'm waiting for that for like Grant Morrison or someone to write that one, but it never happens yet, at least. So when they get a little lower in the, out of the, they've gone too deep in that well, they'll get down there one day. But yeah, so unless you got something else, John, we will see.
No, keep an eye out for the poll for our exclusive patrons.
Oh yes,
they get to pick our second episode this month. We're going to celebrate a Hispanic Heritage Month, so that starts in the middle of September and goes to the middle of October. I don't know why they do that, but as far as like that was chosen for them, but we haven't really given it as much attention on the channel, so we wanted to make sure we hit that. And so we are going to have a poll. It's going to have some great Hispanic characters and Hispanic creators on it. So definitely check that out. If you're a patron, you get to vote in that. And keep an eye out. And with that, I guess we'll see you on the next one.